Hi everyone, today we're going to make an Ankara print dress, just like the one that you're seeing here. So first of all, what you're going to do is you're going to measure your child around the torso, and I measured her and she was 19 inches, which means in terms of length, width-wise, you need 9.5 inches. I folded my piece of fabric in half. The length of the dress is going to be quite short because the child is going to be wearing some kind of pants or trousers underneath the dress. So what I'm going to do is give myself a couple of inches seam allowance, which means I'm going to cut this piece of fabric at 11 inches. Now you're going to need the seam allowance because you might make mistakes, or you might end up sewing too closely, too far into the fabric and end up with a dress that's too small. So cut off the excess, but keep hold of the excess because you're going to use the excess to create your sleeves. Once you've done that, you're then going to cut the piece of fabric in half so that you've got two pieces of fabric independent of each other, and then just have a look and make sure that they're exactly the same size, and they should be. So fold it over, and then you're going to create your armholes. Now cut at an angle. I usually go for 45 degrees, but go for a smaller angle just to see how you feel about the width of the armholes. Open up the fabric and have a look and see if you think the armholes are big enough. In this instance, I thought the armholes were too small because the child needs to be able to move about freely in the dress. So I fold over again, and then I cut extra fabric off at an angle to create my armholes. You need to make sure the child can move freely. It's very, very important, otherwise it's just going to be too tight. It's better to have two big armholes than it is to have two small ones. So then open up the fabric again and have a look and see if you're happy with what you've got. So turn the fabric inside out so that you're seeing the raw side of the fabric facing you, and then you're going to do a straight stitch all the way from the armhole, just at the end of the armhole, all the way down to the end, just as I'm doing here. And then once you've done that, do a reverse stitch just to finish off the end. Now what I'm zooming on here is the dials, because what I'm going to do is an overlocking stitch, and this is a fairly basic sewing machine, but on each sewing machine the overlocking stitch will be different, so just have a look at your instructions to make sure that you've got that right. So I'm folding over the edge here, and this is the armhole edge so that I don't have any raw edges, and as you can see I folded it over, and I'm now just going to do a straight stitch all the way to the end so that you have a nice clean armhole. Then here's my piece of fabric that we cut earlier, and this is about 2 inches, well it's probably about 4 inches, but I folded it in half, so it's a 2-inch strip of fabric which I folded in half, and now I'm going to do a straight stitch all the way across to the end, and that's going to form the basis of your sleeve. So just do a straight stitch, give yourself a little breathing space between the edge of the fabric and the armhole. You don't want to go too far into the fabric when you're sewing, because you need the armhole to be at least a couple of inches in terms of width. Once you've done that, you turn the armhole inside out. Now it's a little bit tricky to do this because it's a tube of fabric, so what I'm using here is a pencil just to push my way through to turn the fabric inside out so that I've got a nice tube-like structure which is going to form the basis of my sleeves. And you do this for the second piece of fabric which you're going to use for your sleeve, for your sleeve. So just do that twice, and there you have it. Right, so after you've done that, you're now going to attach the sleeve onto the dress, and just do a little fold over the edge so that you don't have to do an overlocking stitch, and you can just fold over, and I usually fold over twice, and then I do a straight stitch onto the main body of the dress. That way you don't have to do an overlocking stitch, because it's a bit, well, it just saves you a little bit of time. So now I've attached both sleeves onto the dress, and as you can see, I am now going to create my armholes, but just double check with the sleeves to make sure that you think that the length of the sleeve is sufficient. If you think it's too long, then just cut off a piece. But I'm now going to use two different buttons, well, two yellow buttons. Unfortunately they're not exactly the same, but they will do in terms of width. And measure out your buttonholes, check your manufacturer's instructions to see how you create buttonholes for any kind of fabric. Each machine will be different. And then once I've created my buttonholes, I'm just going to check against the armholes where the sleeve is going to be, against the dress and where the hole for the button is going to be, just to make sure that you're happy with the way it looks and you think that it will be, in terms of arm room, you think that that will be enough. And I think that that's enough space here. So I'm just going to sew that button onto the edge of the sleeve. And as you can see, I'm just showing you where my buttonholes are. And then once you've created your buttonholes, you just cut open the space so that you can see your buttonhole. And that's pretty much it, really. It's a really simple dress to make. The only tricky parts, I would say, is the buttonholes, but once you've mastered that on your sewing machine, you should be absolutely fine. And it's a really nice summery dress, as you can see, and it's great for, you know, beginners particularly, to learn how to make a dress. So my buttonholes are finished, and here's my dress. And it's the same dress I showed you at the beginning. So I hope that the child enjoys it, and I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, then please leave them in the comment box and I'll be sure to reply. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye bye.